Alright folks, today we are going to be doing a review of the free-to-play game Heroes and Generals. Going to state some of the obvious pros, cons. We'll go over a few different things with it. Give you a kind of rundown if you're sitting on the fence on whether or not this game is worth playing. I'm going to start out by pointing out what I believe to be the kind of genre styles of World War II first-person shooters that are out there. Notable titles that are worth mentioning. Kind of draw a comparison because it seems like a lot of people always want comparisons with what's this game like. And it comes a lot from the Call of Duty crowd who always constantly says, well, this game's a ripoff of this game, and this game's a ripoff of this game. Well, all first-person shooters are basically a ripoff of each other because they all involve you running around and shooting something. But I digress. Point being is that there's only been a handful in probably the last 10 or 15 years of notable first-person World War II shooters. The first one that I would note is one that I followed when it was in development was Day of Defeat. Not Day of Defeat with Source, but the original Day of Defeat. And I combined the two to be the same title. And both are almost identical games. It's just one has better graphics than the other because it's on a newer engine, or was on a newer engine. Now it's on an old engine. Those games far superseded pretty much everything that was out at its time. The gameplay was much more in-your-face, fast action, fast respawn, CQB environments, no long-distance shooting. The guy with the Thompson or the guy with the MP40 pretty much reigned supreme in that game. It was still fun, don't get me wrong. I played it for God only knows how long. But it was very restricted in that element. You had a great World War II game, but you didn't have a mil-sim World War II game. The next up was Battlefield 1941 or 1942, I forget the year. It took this huge, big, captivating audience, but they never really delivered in the multiplayer realm as good as it could have. It did. It did deliver, but it wasn't a Battlefield 2 or Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4. It never delivered to that capacity. It actually kind of leads me to just kind of gloss over the whole Battlefield World War II series. I'm not going to mention the Medal of Honors because they were great single players, but they didn't really deliver anything on multiplayer except lag, and no one really stuck around for those things for more than about a month. When World War II Online, which is the original title of it, it's Battleground Europe now, came out, it also captivated us with a different type of mil-sim, open world, pretty much the first World War II shooter that made the whole concept of shooting long distances actually matter. World War II Online also paved the way, if you will, for the new involvement of the first-person shooter infantry guy and the tank. Day Defeat had implemented it originally, where these tanks were sitting in the spawn areas as like a form of defense for the spawn. Battlefield 1941 and 2 had great elements of vehicles, but nowhere near the capacity that World War II Online eventually brought forth. It's a great concept that they had, and they still are running off of it now. The game has since died off. It's older. It was released in 2001. It's still there. You can still pay to play it, but the number of people that do, I think it's like 1,000 or 2,000 compared to probably what was playing back in the peak of 2002, 2003, and 4, where you'd go into these games and there would literally be thousands of people and fighting in one city. You conquer it, you move to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. It was very campaign. Well, it was a campaign. You were fighting for war, the domination of Europe. There's been some other titles, the whole Call of Duty franchise. They delivered pretty good, but again, they didn't really focus on multiplayer. Now, where Heroes and Generals falls in to this whole picture of the World War II shooters is it's delivering a little bit of everything. It's got the open world campaign, because it actually is a campaign. You move from map to map to map. So it'd be like playing Day of Defeat or Battlefield 1942, and every time you took over one map, you progressed a little bit further, and then you play the next map, the next map, the next map. But it's not an open world per se like World War II Online. So you still get those long distance battles where riflemen are shooting across a river or sniping each other through a town. and the assaults are made across open ground to attack farms and stuff. But you also get the CQB once you get within inside the city, where World War II Online could never really deliver. The fighting when you got close up was too difficult. You couldn't really like turn fast and have this adrenaline rush packed element. So I feel that where they succeeded is by basically merging these various different types of gameplay. Main two titles coming to my mind would be Day of Defeat and World War II Online and Battleground Europe. They've merged this fast-paced with the more slower milsim type fighting. Now, it is a free-to-play game, which means if you followed any type of free-to-play game at this point, whether it's the ones off of Yahoo, Steam, some that are popping up on Xbox or wherever, they all have this new in-game currency where the game is free and you can play the basic features of the game, but you can't actually progress at a steady, enjoyable speed through the game unless you're getting the in-game currency. Very few games, I feel, even put the currency in an element to where the normal gameplay is worth playing without dumping cash on the gameplay. Some of the Yahoo games are notorious for that, where they give just enough currency when you start playing the game to get hooked for an hour, and then at that point you're waiting literally hours for stuff to build. Battle Islands on Steam is that way. Tried playing that World War II themed real-time strategy game, and it takes a day to upgrade a unit. Excuse me. Which takes away pretty much all the fun. Where Heroes and Generals falls in the free-to-play realm, though, is a lot more tolerable. Actually, I would say you don't even notice the in-game currency because you don't need it. It's going to take you longer to progress to unlock the things that you want, which makes it much more of the whole Call of Duty, unlock the levels, unlock the guns. If you're used to that type of gameplay, imagine instead of having to play a couple hours to unlock the M4, imagine having to play a couple of days. It's something tolerable when you look at the weapon selection that's available for the World War II era, and you're sitting back going, well, there's only like 8 guns for each side, not a whole lot I can unlock, let's just play the damn game. They do add in a lot of weapon features where you can change triggers and barrels and sights and ammo and magazines, I think, and a handful of other things on your guns, which drastically can decrease or increase their performance in one category or another, whether it's accuracy, precision, rate of fire, damage, etc., etc. Recoil, I believe, is another one, which all leads you to want more in-game currency to unlock these things quicker. But you can just play the game normally without any interruptions and have just as much fun. So they really, even though it's a free-to-play game, they didn't go overboard like a lot of these other games are. And I believe that's why it's become such a popular World War II shooter now. I fell into this game like 6 months ago, didn't really enjoy it, got back into it a few months later, still didn't really enjoy it because of lag issues on my end, and lag issues on their end too. Let's give just deserves. It's an overseas game. It was made in, I believe, Sweden or somewhere in Europe. So you're going to have lag issues if you're someone like me, who's on the west coast of the United States and plays during the evening. Well, I'm playing during when there's pretty much no one on the west coast awake. By evenings, for me, that's 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. But I finally bit the bullet and played the game when I took a vacation from work. Was playing at normal hours, got really hooked because I was playing with people in my area and not nearly as much lag issues. And I'll go as far as to say I've kind of fallen in love with the game. Still won't spend any money on in-game currency. So let's go with the pros and the cons for you guys. The first we're going to go with, let's go with actually the cons. Let's get the bad out of the way. I've already discussed lag. The game is notorious for lag. It's a browser-based first-person shooter. You're going to run into lag. I don't care where you live. I don't care what times you play. The game is notorious for it. I wish that they could fix it. It seems like some games I'll be on the worse end, other games I'll be on the better end while everyone else is on the worst. There's not going to be a fix for it. You got to tolerate it. Can you play through the lag? Yes. It's not to the point to where the lag completely shuts down your game. You'll be able to play it. You're just going to have moments and games where you know that you could be doing better. You know that the system could be doing better, and you can't really be picky trying to get like the perfect game because it's a pain in the ass. You have the option of either being automatically loaded into a match, and you can do training missions, or you can do the actual campaign missions, or you can hand select one. Well, it's a pain in the ass when you try to hand select a mission because most people are automatically going to the random. They're just all being thrown into a game until it's full. So you're sitting there trying to join a game that 40 other people are being automatically added to. You don't usually win. You spend more time in queue. By the time you get into the game, the game's going to be over. So you kind of just have to tolerate the lag. It is manageable. The other con is the wait times with the game. If you end up on a side and they give you a warning message and you pick a side, you will be locked into either Germans or Americans, Allies Axis, when you start a campaign, a war in the game. Now you can't switch until however long it takes. Now right now the campaigns are lasting only a few days. Germans are pretty much sweeping the map every single time. The game used to sometimes take as much as 30 to 60 days to complete a campaign. Now imagine in a 60-day campaign, which those could easily return once things get balanced a little bit better. Imagine a 60-day campaign where you're locked into the Germans, and the Germans are overpopulated by a large percentage. You're going to have much greater wait times than an Allied player who basically could log into the game and instantly join a campaign mission, play for a couple hours, join another campaign mission, play, join another one, and you're still going to be sitting there waiting to get into a game because there's 500 other people in line all wanting to get into games, and on the Ally side there's only a couple of hundred. So think about the ratios. What I do is I simply rotate. Every war I do one side, then the next. One side, then the next. It makes it so, yeah, I might have to deal with wait times for a little bit, but I'm getting the opportunity to try out new weapons, new vehicles that I haven't had an opportunity to try out on the other one. Another con, and they just did a huge wave to try to get rid of this, is hacking. It's a browser-based game. It's free to play. You can go buy the best first-person shooter out there. You can go buy Titanfall or the next Call of Duty or any game. If you're playing on PC, hacking is inevitable. I don't care if it's Steam powered, if there's whatever the hell's going on. You are going to have hacking. Punkbuster, all the other crap that's out there, it's not going to catch it all. I used to hack years ago when I played Counter-Strike, the original one. There's websites out there that you can go to. You can pay 5, 10, 15, 20 bucks, and all these guys do is they build hacks for first-person shooters and real-time strategy games. You can pretty much hack whatever you want. It's why I took an exodus from first-person shooters on the computer and went to the Xbox for a while, because when I realized that you could download what they call gliders for World of Warcraft, where basically your computer played the game for you while you were at work, I was so disgusted at that point, having played WoW for about 2 years, I walked away from it, went back to my console, and was playing pretty much hacker-free. You're going to be dealing with hacking. You're going to sit back and have those days where you run around the corner and the guy with a horrible gun scores a headshot on you, and he's doing it on every single person. You can't get away from that. The best thing that you can do if you encounter that is just to deal with it. There's no other way out. If you leave the game and then try to join another, hacking does not run completely rampant through the game, but you are going to find it. You're going to find people making amazing shots at such huge distances. Luckily, the maps are fairly big. You can usually just avoid that person. You can go to another area. You can go to another objective. Pretty much, in my opinion, other than a few glitches here and there in the game, which the game is still in production, they're still working on it and updating it all the time, so those glitches might exist for a couple of weeks and then disappear. There's really not a whole lot of other cons for a game that you don't spend any money on. So let's dive into the pros, because there's far more of those. First off, I'm just going to say it, the graphics in the game are phenomenal. For a free-to-play game, they couldn't have done better. It is the same model over and over and over again for each side. I'm hoping that eventually they will change that. The only difference in the models is that a tank crew member does look completely different. They look like a tank crewman. The infantry look like infantries. The paratroopers look like paratroopers. The fighter pilots look like fighter pilots. But beyond that, the infantry guy looks exactly like every other one. And there is absolutely no difference between them. Same thing with the paratroopers. Same thing with the fighter pilots and the tank crewmen. So there is not a whole lot of variety there in the skins, but there is phenomenal work done on the environment, on the actual models and the skins themselves. While it may be the same one over and over, they did a great job on it. The weapons also look, again, phenomenal. They look great. The environment, while not destructible, which would be nice, looks amazing. There's not as much involvement in the environment in the cities as I would like, but most buildings are open. I'd probably say about 50% about 50 to 55% of the buildings are open to where you can go into any floor, any room, and you can shoot from the rooftop if you can access it to the third floor, fourth floor, second floor, first floor, doesn't matter. It creates a nice dynamic in the CQB realm. Ragdoll effect for their animations I also think is pretty good. I actually have a separate video that shows one of the ragdoll effects where a tank blows up a certain area, player tumbles, flies through the air. I thought they did it fairly well. The main pro for me, though, is I'm a guy who likes milsim. I'd much rather play a slow-paced game than a fast-paced Call of Duty, even though I've spent many hours playing the Call of Duty series. I loved World War II Online because in World War II Online, a tank was a god against infantrymen. They've done the exact same thing here. A tank fires a high explosive round into a farm, it decimates pretty much everything that's in the barn that it hits. Whether or not it hits it or not, it's an area effect damage that is so great that it causes mass destruction. I like that because it makes that such a tipping point in the game that you want to carry around a bazooka or a Panzerschreck. You want to go run and find Panzerfausts laying on the ground so you can take the tank out. It makes it a high-profile target that people just simply can't ignore. I also don't like the way that, I believe it was 1942, that made it to where you could just shoot at a tank long enough and it would die. That's not the case here. If a crew member, just like in World War II Online, pops their head out of the tank, pop, you kill them, they're dead. I don't believe that hand grenades, I've tried a couple of times to derail tanks. You can't do that like you can in World War II Online, or detract them, however you wish to call it. But you can, very effectively, knock them out. But if you hit them in the right spots. You start trying to shoot a bazooka at a tank from the front, a lot of times you might get little things that say, I think is impact angle too high, or you just don't do enough damage to it. You want to hit them from behind traditionally, or if you can get them from the bottom, if they're going up over a hill or something, you're at the bottom of the hill. The milsim in that aspect is awesome. The other element is that they allow mobile spawns from like half tracks. Another great feature, because a lot of times you are going to have to spawn quite a ways back and walk or run or ride a bicycle or ride a vehicle into combat to get closer to the actual physical fighting. But if you have teammates that have half tracks, you're spawning in. They make it seem more realistic. The damage ratio on some of these guns is pretty low when you initially start, but when you start upgrading it, you get the damage ratio much higher. All of these things contribute, in my opinion, to a much better milsim experience than you're going to get from just a Day of Defeat type video game where you're just running around with a Thompson, spraying rounds everywhere and killing people. The other main thing that I love about the game, and you only get this on a few maps, is the direction-based team play. And when I say that, direction-based team play, I'm referring to the rush style of gameplay that a lot of people are familiar with from the newer Battlefields. Battlefield 3, I thought their rush design gameplay was amazing because it caused a team to go in the same direction. So you couldn't split up and do this lone wolf shit like in Call of Duty games, where half the kills you get are just shooting people from behind because you circumvented the map. But you're forced. You have to go in that direction. The enemy is over there and the enemy is camping and setting up defenses and your team has to attack. Or vice versa. The enemy team is coming towards you, set up a defense, prepare. I love that type of gameplay. That to me is the epitome of getting milsim into games, because you're forcing people to work as a team. They do this exceptionally well. I believe that Battlefield has it pretty much wired tight with their rush concept, but they've pretty much implemented this into this game to where when you are the attacking team and you're trying to take objectives, you have to take the first objective before you can take the next, or the next, or the next, or the next. So it serves you no purpose as a team to try to go and circumvent the map and come up behind for knife kills, because you won't be able to take the objectives and the game will end almost shit probably 1/3 of the time if you're not continuing to try to take objectives, because a lot of the time based. Now when you start out, you will not get access to those type of maps. They actually require you to level and get past kind of a newbie phase where you're only permitted into training missions before you can actually enjoy those type of maps that are more associated with the campaign. Now they do have some maps. There's a couple, I forget their names, but they're usually, there's only 3 spots, capture points. Kind of falls along the lines of the whole resource hold that's in Company of Heroes, where you have to send everybody out and you hold the area for a certain amount of time, you're getting resources. The same concept, and in those maps, yes, it's the Call of Duty shit where you're running, where half the time you're getting killed is somebody who circumvented the map on a bicycle who comes up behind you and they're just shooting everybody in the back. Not really my favorite type of gameplay. If you are playing those maps a lot, you'll sometimes see Biscuits 916 exiting out because I get so sick of those types of maps. And you don't see them all the time, but you will see them. If you're into that type of gameplay, which I'm not going to fault you, you'll definitely enjoy that persona of maps, that category. But there's only like 2 in this, where there's about 4 or 5 different factory-based, airfield-based, or urban-based maps that are much larger and capture-based oriented, which force the directional-based team play. There's a lot to take away from this game. I think that for it being free, if you're on the fence and you're debating whether or not you should give it a shot, I would say go for it. I give it about a 7 out of 10. I would give it a higher percentage if they would invest a little bit more into their sound quality, which some of the guns, they sound like they're silenced, and I don't believe that's intentional, because you'll be firing a M1 Garand, for example, and the sound just generally sounds kind of muffled. There's the weakness in some of the other cons that I've talked about. I don't really consider the lack of sound quality as a con, because you turn your speakers up a little bit, you're going to enjoy it just the same. And once you get into the game, you kind of start forgetting about the sound, but you definitely don't get that, yeah, awesome sound like you do in other games. It's free, guys. At the end of the day, it's a free game. If you had the time to listen to the review, you probably have time to go download the game and give it a shot. If you are going to give it a shot, I would bear with it and grit down to give it at least about 6 hours of your time before you throw in the towel. There's a little training thing that'll get you through kind of the gist of it. If you don't have that type of time to devote to the game, to get yourself familiar with the gameplay, to get used to the way that the maps are run, to get yourself out of the newbie maps that actually don't contribute at all to the campaign progression, don't even bother. Because you're going to download the game, you're going to hate the lag, you're going to hate some of the other issues, and you're going to end up tossing it off to the side. But if you're somebody who's on vacation, you're a kid who's got plenty of time, and by kid I mean teenager, so don't hate me, I'm 28. If you're 16, to me you're a kid. You'll have plenty of time, guys, to get into the game, but you're going to have to give it your all. If you don't end up liking it, hey, what are you out? 6 hours you probably would have spent looking at porn or playing some other game. And if you end up liking it, you just got an awesome first-person shooter for free. One that's constantly updated, and one that I don't see is going to go away anytime soon. Alright guys, take it easy. Hope you enjoyed the review.